One of the greater things to come out of 2017 was the revival of the 3D platformer in the gaming industry. Games ranging from fantastic to blue ball busting disappointment, such as Mario Odyssey, Crash Insane Trilogy, and Sonic Forces, among other indie titles. High-grossing games that would let it be known to the industry that games they thought were dead in the Wii era can come back and make them dough, while also not seeming like a soulless cash grab. What's interesting though, is that indie kickstarted 3D platformers were both ruined and saved in the same exact fucking year. Yooka Laylee, a game hyped for a long time as being the successor to the N64 era Banjo-Kazooie, that died when Banjo became fat, almost like an analogy for the series being consumed with greed by its new owners. Since then, we haven't gotten a Banjo-Kazooie game that mattered, and Yooka Laylee was supposed to beat the bad man that touched our private parts. Meanwhile, on the exact opposite end of the coin, there was a Hat in Time, being developed by an indie team of volunteer workers known as Gears for Breakfast. Nobody saw this Paper Mario, Mario Sunshine, Wind Waker love child coming, and those who didn't expect it to be as much a success as it was. Now the question is, how did these two get flopped onto opposite ends of the same coin? Yooka Laylee, a highly anticipated title that was early on being compared to a AAA game, raising over $2 million on Kickstarter, was met with mixed reviews at best. Meanwhile, A Hat in Time, the cute as fuck game that came out of nowhere with nearly a tenth of what Yooka Laylee had raised, has left with outstanding reviews and large coverage. How did this happen? Yeah, pretty much to sum it up, I'm going to go over what made Yooka Laylee the disappointment it was in 2017 and what made A Hat in Time such an unexpected surprise. Keep in mind this is all opinion, so like if you like Yooka Laylee or A Hat in Time, or you hate Yooka Laylee or A Hat in Time, well that sucks. Although fundamentally similar, Yooka and Hat Kid have different controls which can impact your personal experience. Much of Yuka's moveset comes from the coin MacGuffins that you collect throughout your travels, the Golden Feathers. Although you can collect these extra moves, Yooka starts with a base attack, along with your typical requirements for gameplay. Yooka's controls are a little sluggish, feeling like it takes a moment to get started and get going, akin to Banjo. Hat Kid, on the other hand, zips to wherever you want her to go, with very little slipping when you stop, allowing for precise platforming, something that I had a lot more of a struggle with when it came to Yooka. Something that I found to be annoying was that Yooka has quite a wide range of movement options, but they are all locked behind feathers of a given world, some of which it takes forever to get to. I can understand movesets such as the flying, the grapple, and the charge to break through windows, but did they really have to restrict moves such as the glide, the roll, and the high jump? Hat Kid pretty much starts with everything you will need after the first stage is completed, which includes a jump, a double jump, a dash cancel, a wall jump, a homing attack, and a ground attack. Sure, Hat Kid has some movesets that are locked behind the MacGuffins of its world as well. However, these did not feel like a need to collect, rather than a want to collect them. You can also go through A Hat in Time without needing some of these power-ups and successfully beat the game. I managed to collect the 25 timepieces needed to beat the final boss without touching Alpine Skyline, the last stage in the game. Yooka, on the other hand, makes it painfully obvious that you need a certain item to progress. Somewhere you cannot get them until the very final stage, where you can finally backtrack to complete a world. Hat Kid's mobility was an extreme plus side to the game, where I felt I could challenge myself and try crazy stunts that didn't feel bad if I messed up. With Yooka, I can't say the same, as oftentimes I would hold my breath and then scream at the damned lizard because his roll was too slippery. One of the larger points that made A Hat in Time more enjoyable for me was the originality behind it. It took outlandish, silly concepts and made them work, some of which I could never even think of. A movie battle between space penguins and western owls, led by an Elvis-inspired DJ Penguin and a potty-mouthed whatever the fuck that abomination is. Seriously, what's next? Rocket-powered pirate ships who cruise in a lagoon delivering pizza to their patrons. A Hat in Time has extremely memorable stages, characters, music in the game, which is a problem when it comes to Yooka Laylee. I remember when I was playing Yooka for the first time, I kept saying how much it reminded me of Banjo-Kazooie. There comes a point where a spiritual successor should grow from a reminder to something new altogether. The music, the stages, the character design, the horrendous punny dialogue, the bosses, the game mechanics, it all felt like a retread on what Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie had already established. I mean, yes, I want a new Banjo game, but the fun part about playing Banjo-Kazooie was how original it was. Even Tooie had more originality than Yooka Laylee did. which should have been expected since it was a spiritual successor. However, when the most memorable part of a game is the snake oil salesman, and that's mostly because his literal character is a pun, it's a sign that nothing new was really added to the table. With A Hat in Time, I never had this issue, and constantly look forward to the next world. Even worlds like Alpine Skyline, I had an immense amount of fun exploring, which had little to no story whatsoever. A good analogy to how the two games compare is the soundtrack accompanying each game. Yooka Laylee's music, while not bad per se, is extremely similar to Banjo-Kazooie, with no music that pops out to make it its own thing. Meanwhile, with A Hat in Time, I would stand in a specific area or try to let a fight last longer, just so I could hear the full extent of that song. Great work, Gears for Breakfast. Now I'm going to be humming Your Contract Has Expired all day. Maybe it's an allegory to losing your soul to the Snatcher? What's interesting to me is the bugs that came out of Yooka Laylee's initial release. Frame drops, lag, unbearable camera, wonky controls, and glitches being quite a few of the different issues the game faced on release. Before a patch could come out, the damage had been done, as reviews of the game were already released. A Hat in Time suffers from some of these issues, namely some frame drops in busy areas like Alpine Skyline, and some visual glitches. A big difference in this being that A Hat in Time was nearly completely volunteer, and made only a fraction of what Yooka Laylee did on Kickstarter. The mistakes you get from Yooka Laylee on launch is almost expected of a game with a much lower budget. It's almost ironic, because Yooka Laylee could have influenced a lower funding to A Hat in Time when you think about it. Its rocky release combined with high standards set by the community made this idea that Kickstarter projects were always going to be doomed to fail. Interesting how the world works, I guess. Overall, I would say that A Hat in Time does what Yooka Laylee tried to do on a smaller budget. It established itself as a new IP while taking inspiration from previous games. Although I've said a lot of negative things about Yooka Laylee, that doesn't mean I don't think the game had some value when I played it. I enjoyed it to some degree, but just not as much as I enjoyed A Hat in Time. I think a part of this comes from the high expectations we all had, especially when thinking this could have been the Banjo 3 we all wanted. Instead, it feels like a Banjo clone with the same mistakes and errors from a game in the N64 era running on an Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and the Nintendo Switch with better graphics. However, it's rocky initial releases that can sometimes prove to be a wake-up call to developers. I hope that Playtonic takes this as a learning experience and learns from the reviews, correcting what many people hated. I also hope that Playtonic tries to evolve their new IP, rather than relying on nostalgia and old game design. Meanwhile, I have to applaud Gears for Breakfast. They took the want for something more than Yooka Laylee and turned it into a full-course meal, with free desserts. I want to see this company expand, and I hope they will continue this series or start new projects. As of right now, there doesn't appear to be any plans for A Hat in Time 2, however with the expansion of DLC and custom levels on the PC, I'm not surprised. Can't wait to see Hat Kid wearing an eye patch with an M16 in her hands outright slaughtering the Mafia. Hey, thanks for watching. Background music done by Jacob15. Check out his shit in the description below. All artwork and voice work, unless credited otherwise, was done by me. If you liked the video, then smash that like button, or just subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, I'm not sure how you made it this far, but thanks, I guess. If you think that I can improve, then leave a comment below. Appreciate it, guys. See ya.